Hi, this is Ruth Brunner, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing Ruth Firestien, and we are in Bracewell, Colorado, on their farm that she has lived at for 68 years.
That's correct.
And Ruth is now 89 years old, and I'm kind of very curious, having visited with you, a little bit about how this farm is on the National Historic Register.
National Register of Historic Places.
And how did that come about, or?
Well, my daughter was responsible for that. We've tried to preserve the farm and the area around us, and so she said, we're going to get on the National Register of Historic Places so that we can stay here and preserve the wildlife area and all the stuff that goes around on the farm.
Yeah, and it's listed as the Von
Trotha Firestien Farm.
Okay, and why is that?
Because a family by the name of Von Trotha homesteaded this area from where I live, a mile to the east. All on the south side of the road was owned by the Von Trothas. And they came from Germany. And later on, after the parents lived in this house just about a quarter of a mile from where I live. And when they were gone, then the two sons, Claude and Bode, took over the farming operations and business of it. And they were just great landlords. We farmed for them for a long time. And so when she got us on the National Register, she wanted to include the Von Trotha name too.
Yeah.
And so that's, and then, like I say, they were great landlords. And later on, after they got older, they didn't ever, well, they had married late in life, so they didn't have any kids. And so they didn't know what to do with the land that they had, because they didn't want to farm it anymore. Well, they weren't farming it, they were just taking care of it. But they were wanting to know what they could do. So they had formed a corporation with the renters, and each person had so many shares and stuff, and however it goes. And then they decided, well, we don't have any relatives that we can donate this farm to or gift it to, so how about asking the renters if they want to buy the farms, which they did. And my father-in-law then purchased our place here. Nobody else did along the way. We were the only ones that kept the place, and so we've had it for a long time.
Okay, so what year was that, do you think that?
I've been trying to think. It was in the 60s.
In the 60s,
yeah,
okay.
In the 60s, early 60s, but I can't just remember whether it was,
yeah,
just whether it was 64, 65, or somewhere along in there.
So where were the Von
Trotha
brothers from? They
I don't know.
Migrated from Germany.
I don't know whether they were born over in the United States or whether they were born in Germany. I don't know that, but
yeah,
I just barely knew either one of them. But I did know them, but I didn't know their parents.
How about your family? Where did you were born here in the States?
Yes, my grandparents migrated from Germany, well, Russia. They're Russian Germans, and my dad was born in Germany, and so he became a citizen, and we farmed, or he farmed, and my uncle, just north of 392 on Road 27, not far from where I am
now.
Yeah, just real close here, for over 30 years.
Okay.
And so that's where I grew up.
That's where you grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So did you go to school in Bracewell, or where did you go to school?
No, I went to school in Lucas.
Lucas.
Yes, it was a country school. There was Lucas and LaGrange and Buell. Well, those three I can remember. And I went to Lucas. And then when I went there for 8 years, then when I was ready to go to high school, they were talking consolidation, with all the Windsor schools. So I guess there was a fine line drawn somewhere, and I ended up in Windsor School, and my classmates ended up in Eton School. And so then I graduated from Windsor in 1948.
Okay, so what was that like when you had to, what was your Lucas School? What was Lucas School like?
It was it was one of the newer buildings, schools that was built at that time, I guess, because it was a little more modern than the rest of them. But it was a nice building, and it's still there. It's been made into a house, and it was about 2 miles east of where I lived.
Okay.
So,
So if anybody wanted to go see Lucas School, it's on.
it's on, well, it would be about I think it's Road 70, and 2 miles over here would be
29, 31?
31.
31.
Yeah, 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
how many classrooms did you have in there?
We had 3 classrooms and a really nice basement where we did plays and things of that sort. It was just a real nice school, but didn't have a bathroom. We still had to go out to the toilet.
You had to go out to the outhouse for that.
Yeah.
Did it have running water or?
I don't
Maybe
remember
at
that. We must have had water someplace because the teacherage was built in the school. I mean, it wasn't a separate building. It was like a little apartment in the school. And so the teachers lived there, so I don't know where they got there. I don't remember that.
That's interesting. So the teacherage, can you explain for people who maybe don't know what a teacherage is?
Well, it's a place for the teachers to live that are teaching school there. I never was in the teacherage, but a lot of, well, I think it's LaGrange still has the little house where the teachers lived away from the school. But Lucas had their teacherage inside the building.
So if there's 3 classrooms, how many grades were there?
1 through 8.
1 through 8. And how did they group them, or how was,
I think it was first and second grade, and then third, fourth, and fifth, and then sixth, seventh, and eighth.
Okay. So did you have the same teacher then for
No, we had a different teacher for every room.
for every room?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Were they ladies, men?
They were all ladies at that time.
single, married?
Oh boy, I think 2 of them were married. 1 of them wasn't. Something like that.
Okay. So, having gone to a 1-room or a 3-room schoolhouse, how was that different from education today?
Well, when I graduated from 8th grade, there were 4 of us. And so that kind of tells how many kids were in each grade. It was small grades. And I think in the first grade, first and second grade, there might have been, well, maybe there were 10 kids in the room, compared to what we have today, 20 and 30. And
So how did the teacher organize the classroom if you had 3 grades to teach in one room, or 2 grades to teach in one room?
She would teach one class or one grade, and then get them to working, and then the other teacher or the other class, she would teach them and get them going, and each one separately, and then we all had to do our thing.
Yeah, we're independent in that. So, all right. What kind of tests and things did you have to move from grade to grade, or did they have exit exams or?
It was nothing like that. If we got good grades, I guess, or passed our stuff, we went on to the next grade.
You went on to the next grade.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that was life at Lucas School. Then when you went to Windsor High School, 9th grade, where was that? And 1944?
Yeah. It was like another world. Coming from a 3-room school to this huge building. I mean, that's the way it seemed to me. And I didn't know where to go, but I was lucky to have some friends from church, and so they kind of helped me get through the first few weeks so I'd know where I was going.
Yeah. So was that the building that's on Main Street? That's the
Yes.
east side of the old junior,
yes.
the Windsor Middle School?
It was the junior high building at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess it'd be the middle school right now.
Yes, the Windsor Middle School. So do you remember the basketball pit or the gymnasium that was down there?
Just a little bit. We used to go down there during lunch time, or we'd have a little. Well, you might call it recess, but it wasn't really recess. But we'd go down there once in a while, and then I remember we watched. I think we played some girls basketball or something once in a while. I don't remember too much about that.
Okay. And the auditorium was huge. The basketball court was very small in the old high school, right? It was nicknamed the Pit. Did you use that one or the one that was part of the junior high? You're not
I
sure?
don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah, because that one was literally nicknamed the Pit because it had the pipes running through it. And,
Yeah. I don't remember that. It must have been the other one.
okay, that's good. So what do you remember about the big auditorium?
Well, I just remember that that's where we had study hall, and we had desks that we sat in, and I guess when there was a play, you sat in the desks
Okay,
instead
yeah.
of in chairs, you know, or so that's the way I remember.
Yeah. All right. And so then you graduated in 1948. What was the ceremony or graduation like for you? Or
I have no idea. I don't remember.
it wasn't.
It wasn't anything.
Okay.
Just got my diploma.
Got your diploma. And then what did you do after graduation?
I went to work for Dr. Joseph Walker, the dentist, the only dentist in town at that time.
All right.
And I went to work for him for 2 years. And then I decided I didn't want to work for him anymore, and I wanted to go to beauty school. So I went to Greeley Beauty School and got my certificate so I could work and be a beauty operator, which I did then for about 2 years, I guess, until I got married. And then my husband went to the service and was stationed in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And after basic training, I went down to Missouri and lived with him. And I was so glad that I had my beauty training because I worked down there then for 2 years while he was stationed down there.
While he was stationed there.
Yeah.
So how did you meet your husband? And
I always kind of knew of him.
uh-huh.
But one night, my cousin and I went to Windsor, and I don't even remember what for or why. And we stopped at the ice cream place, I think it was, or somewhere. And here's these guys in the vehicle came along, and we didn't realize it at the time when we left there. Then they were following us, and they followed us out to where the number 2 ditch goes. You know where that is, northeast of Windsor, and stopped and chatted with us, and that's kind of. And then my husband asked me for a date, and that was the beginning.
So was the ice cream shop Leisure's Drug, or
No, it was another little place farther east. It was more, well, where the filling station is now. It was closer to that, to the west of that a little bit.
Okay.
I don't remember what
So
it was called.
what was the date like, or where would you go to be with friends and that?
These other he was with three other guys. His brother was one who was a little bit younger, and then 2 of his friends were actually, I think, second cousins, and they chummed around a lot together. So it was usually all of us going together. Sometimes the other guys would have a girlfriend, but it was always him and me. And we'd go to the movies, and then we'd go out to Jess's, where it's JB's now, and have something.
Oh, in Greeley?
In Greeley, and have something to eat, and then come home.
Go home.
That was kind of our Saturday night or middle of the week.
Middle of the week. Was there a movie theater in Windsor, or where was the?
I think the movie theater in Windsor was gone by that time. There was one at one time.
It opened and closed and
Yeah,
did different things. So, all right. So tell me your husband's full name again.
Wilbert Wayne Firestien.
Firestien.
But he went by Chuck. Somebody, when he was younger, gave him the nickname of Chuck, so it was Chuck all the time.
Chuck. And so then you came after his service time. You came back and farmed here in Bracewell.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we got married, the landlord, or my father-in-law, told the landlord, he said, "Chuck's getting married. I need a house." He wanted us to live close by. So anyway, the landlords were going to build us a new house, but they were recyclers. And so there happened to be a house on one of the other properties that had been used for the hired man, and it had been empty for a while because they didn't need a hired man at that time. And so they said, "Well, we'll move that house over and fix it up, and then will that be okay?" So sure, that was fine. So we lived here from August until June before he went to the service.
So the house you're in right now was one that was moved from another.
It was moved from the next farm to the east of us, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember that process? How did they do that?
No, because I was working and I didn't get to see a lot of the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just I ended up ended up doing a number of rooms painting.
Uh-huh.
My mother and I did quite a bit of painting and stuff. So that's all I remember. I don't remember the process of moving it over or anything, and I wish I did.
Yeah, but it stood the test of time. It
Yeah.
looks pretty solid. And
It's a
here's it.
solid house.
Yeah.
I don't hear the traffic, and people sit here and they, "Wow, you don't hear that?" I don't hear it.
I don't hear it. So then the house that's to the south of you, that's on the National Register, what is the story of the stucco house there?
That was, now the story that was told to us, there was a little house farther behind that, and my in-laws lived there first. And this stucco house was built for one of the Von Trotha boys. Whoever got married first was going to get to live in that house. Well, they didn't get married, and they didn't get married, and finally, I guess the other house got too small for all the kids, and stuff. So they let my father-in-law live in that house. So that's how they got to live in the big house.
In the big house.
And when that house was built, it was there was bathroom and running water. Everything was fixed, and electricity. And in the beginning, there was this artesian well just a little ways south of the house, and that's what the house was hooked on with water with it.
Wow.
And then later on, in 1951, the Von Trothas decided they were going to do something special for the land renters and for themselves too, because they were still living down there. I think maybe they were in town by then. But anyway, they hooked the places all up to City of Greeley water line. Mm-hmm. So everybody had water in the house, bathroom, running water everywhere. So
that was a luxury.
It was a luxury then, yeah, because every drop of water you had to carry.
Yeah.
So my husband always teased me. He said, "Well, you married me because I had running water and bathroom inside." And you didn't have that at home.
Yeah,
So,
things we take for granted.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that. So you have some information about Bracewell. This is, people maybe don't even know there really was a town of Bracewell.
Right. Well, it wasn't really a town. It was just
Didn't have a post office?
No post office. It was just called Bracewell because there was a Bracewell school, and then just a little bit, well, right on the corner of 27 and 64 and a half, as it is now, was a little store. And it's still there, but it's not a store anymore. And Dan and Minna Herbst ran that little store, and it was kind of a gathering place for the farmers. They would go there and take a break, and get a bottle of pop out of the big cooler. Mm-hmm. And there was also gas. They also had gas station, so you could go fill gas, and they lived in. Well, it was, how can I say this? They were in the store, little bit of store here, and where they lived right next in one building.
Yeah.
And they
the owners.
Yeah, they later on.
Do you remember their names?
Dan and Minna Herbst.
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 Okay.
Uh-huh. Their son still lives in the house next door to what was the store. Uh-huh. And so yeah, he's lived there all his life, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and then the beet dump was really a special place too, because the farmers all around brought their beets to the dump, and then they were loaded on the train and took to the factory. And so there again, I got to ride with my dad every now and then down to the dump, and that was quite an experience.
Yeah, so I do remember the Bracewell sugar beet dump and that. You want to talk about that process of the sugar beets and the harvest and...
Yeah.
That was a big, the campaign, they would call it.
Yeah, that was a campaign. Well, first of all, the beets were planted and grew, and they were hoed, and then when they were about October, they were ready to harvest. And so that's where a lot of the Germans from Russia people came in and did the beets. And I recall the puller that they went through the field and pulled the beets out, and then people came along and actually pulled the rest of the beet out and laid them to the side. And then they had what they called a V, and it was a little wooden sled. I always called it a sled that would make the how can I say this? Well, make a path, a smooth path, and they would come along then and chop the beet tops off, throw the tops one side, and throw the beets in the little
Sled.
opening there.
Yeah.
And I got to ride on that sled a lot of times, pulled by the horse. And that was always, I was just a kid there, and I liked to do that. And then I remember my dad, well, then my husband later on too, before beet loaders came along, here they came with big forks, shoveled the beet, or forked the beets up on the truck. Now that was a job. You had to be pretty tough to put a load of those. And when they had enough on the truck, they'd come down to the beet dump, and there was a scale lady, or well, they called it the scale. There was always a woman in the scale house, and she would weigh the truck with the beets on it. Then the truck would go to the, I don't know what they called that, but it was like a bin with a belt, and they would dump the beets in there, and it would go through this process of, well, I guess by the time it rumbled, or they rumbled around, they lost dirt and leaves and stuff, and so then the truck would stop a little ways farther on and pick up the tear, they called it, and then he would go back to the beet, to the scale house, and be weighed again, and that was the weight for that day that they kept.
Yeah, they subtracted the difference of the tear, so
Yeah,
they
the
know how
tear.
much was actually sugar beets.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
Yeah, and then a lot of, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes then the guys would go to the store and have pop, and that was kind of the connection there.
Yeah.
But here was this big cooler with all these bottles of pop in it, and you'd go get your pop, and
And away you'd go. So, wow. So as a wife of a farmer, how did your life change then? You know, what changes did you see in farming? From riding, you know, beside the sled and the horse with your dad, you know, or did you ever work the beet fields yourself?
no,
Okay.
no, I never did.
But-
Well, I think the first thing I remember was the beet loader. They would go through this where they had thrown the beets thrown, and they would load the beets up on the truck instead of forking them up. And then came the topper, where they didn't need the manual labor anymore. They'd go through and top the beets first, and then they would pull them out of the ground, and I think the puller and the loader were connected. They were all in one operation then, and then they'd go up on the. That was one of the biggest things that I remember, and now of course later on then they even got the thinners, you know, where there was no need for hand labor anymore.
And the thinning was done after they planted the seed in the spring.
Yeah,
and they'd come
after the beets got so tall or so big, they would go through and thin them, and I think they had to be about every 6 inches or so apart in order for them to grow and stuff. And yeah.
Yeah. So wow, you've seen changes as far as that.
Lots of changes.
Lots of changes
in farming. Yeah.
Is your ground still farmed, or?
I still have 50 acres that are farmed.
Okay.
Well, not quite 50 acres, but 50 acres, the whole with the houses and everything. We sold. Well, we had about 200 acres, and we sold all but 50 acres to the Best Way gravel mining, and they mined the gravel out, and we didn't know what was going to happen with the rest of the farm. Then, you know, we were hoping that they wouldn't build a bunch of houses and stuff. Well, luckily we had sold to George and Betty Hall, and they were the ones that owned the Best Way and all the concrete and stuff. And maybe about 2 years ago, they donated what was left of our farm to the Pruder Learning Center.
Yes.
Do you remember
that's
hearing about that?
Big thing. So
Yeah.
the Pruder Learning Center, for people that are watching this, is located just south of you, right?
Yes.
And so what have you seen, or with the coming of the Pruder Learning Center, when they brought this schoolhouse that was on Highway 34 there and had to rebuild it?
Well, we just kind of watched it go up, and I remember, well, here was water again. They needed water, and I remember there were a couple of men from the city that came out and visited with my husband and me, because he was president of the Shark's Tooth Pipeline Company at that time. That's what it was called. And they wondered if they could get a tap for the Poudre Learning Center. And so the Poudre Learning Center is on the same Shark's Tooth line as we are. And we've done things with the Poudre Learning Center, and just enjoy working with them. And they have a big plan for the future for this land. And the most important thing, I think, is they want to build an observatory west of our house. There's a little bit of a rise in the ground there. It's a little bit higher than where the other is. And that's where they want to build this observatory. And so that's going to be something, and they've just got so many plans that it's going to take them a long time to get it all done, but it'll be really nice when they get done.
But they make good neighbors, because
Yes.
the Poudre Learning Center is set up for schools of Greeley, Windsor. What other schools participate in it?
I think maybe Eaton too. I'm not sure.
And it's an outdoor education place.
Yes, it's great. It's a great place. Yeah, yeah.
So did you? What was the land like before Best Way? Was it?
We farmed it.
You
It was
farmed it.
farm ground.
It
yeah.
was all farm ground.
Yeah,
as far
but
as
there's a
that.
lot of gravel. There was a lot of gravel, and so they were interested. They had mined across the river, and so they wanted to mine our place too, because they found that there was a lot of gravel in it. Yeah, so.
All right. So, we've had a wonderful visit. Is there things you wish I'd asked you about, or things? I mean, because you're a wealth of information.
Something that I just thought about while we were talking. I had made a list here, but during World War II, there was prisoner of war. We had prisoners, from Germany, and the prisoner of war camp was down on Highway 34, just south of us here, a couple miles, and we used, well, how should I say this? Our boys were fighting in the war, and their boys were over here in prisons, and so we needed help in the beet fields, and so we used the German prisoners to help in the harvest, or the harvesting of the beets. But anyway, I remember my dad would take the truck in the morning and go down to the prisoner of war camp and load up, I don't know how many guys, maybe 20, and bring them back
No
to the...
seatbelts.
No seatbelts, benches in the back of the pickup, and bring them home, and they would work the fields then. And I remember vaguely, but he told me this so many times, but they would come in to the field or to the yard for lunch, and they would sit in the yard and they would sing and chatter and stuff. And my grandparents and my dad could talk pretty well German, and so they would chat with them. And they weren't supposed to do that, but you can't help it when you.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, one day my dad decided that I was taking piano lessons at the time, and he decided that I needed to play for him while they sang, and they sang "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God," and I played that for him on my piano. I was in the house and they were out singing, and he just thought that was the greatest thing. So I remember that.
Yeah.
And my husband told me several times too that they would unload him on the up by the Bracewell where the railroad track was, and they would march him down to the prisoner of war camp when they came.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty active railroad line through here.
Yeah.
Did it go through? Is the same one line that went through Severance? Is it the part of or is it a separate line?
I think this goes. I don't know. This comes from Windsor and goes east through Farmer Spur and along in there.
It's been part of the Great Western Spur now.
Yeah.
It might be the Great Western Railroad line. That they
It
used,
was at one
probably,
time.
because for the beats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you ever talk to any of the prisoners?
I never did, but like I say, my dad and my grandpa did. Yeah. So, and I know some people said that they would even give them a little bit of extra food, like maybe dessert or something like that, which they weren't supposed to do. But the guard was over here. He had his gun, and he was, he didn't see that. But there was always a guard with them, and there were some people, some of them that didn't, well, they didn't know if they wanted to work or not, but most of them did. They were glad to get out for a while. But that was quite a setup that they had down there for the prisoner of war camp.
Yeah. So, well, that's a great story. I'm sure you have others.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, something I thought of this morning. The way the river flows down south of us here, it's flooded several times. And at one time, apparently, it came back into a spot that was low. Well, it formed what we called a skating pond. It was about 12 inches deep, and every winter it would freeze. 12 inches, that wasn't very much. And I think every kid in the area here learned how to ice skate down there.
Wow.
Yeah, that was even my own kids.
You and your own kids.
Yeah.
So that was
It was a fun place, and my husband and I were sponsors of the youth group at church for a number of years, and that was where we'd go for winter roast and skate.
Wow.
So but since then the river has made another path, and the pond is gone.
Okay.
But it was
So what church was it?
St. John's United Church of Christ.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, at that time it was St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church in Greeley.
Oh, in Greeley.
In Greeley.
In Greeley.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my husband's church.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But then with mergers and stuff, it's United Church of Christ now. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So, anything else? I know you have a picture. You want to hold up, show your picture of Bracewell? Yeah.
Well, the school was up here.
Okay.
It doesn't show on there. We have a picture, or we thought we had a picture, but we couldn't find it. So.
Yeah. The Bracewell School. What house and building is that right in front? That
That's
two-story one.
Okay, just a minute. That was where the store was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because you can see the gas station dealies right there. It's not a very good,
Yeah. Okay.
but that's where the store was. I don't know if that's the original building or not but there were a couple of houses beyond there then too.
Wow. Well, you are a living history for Ruth of this town and this area. So I thank you for your time. I love to look at your quilts that you're working on and how you keep yourself productive and during these kind of busy different times. So is there anything else that you would like to tell us before we say goodbye and thank you? And
I think that's all, except that you can see all the quilts that I've made. And
yeah, I have to show those. And when you're working on right
this
here.
pile right here is going to the hospital if this thing ever settles down.
If COVID ever settles
but
down.
I make quilts for the hospital with my leftover fabric.
Uh-huh.
And so that's what keeps me occupied.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And on this day, August 25th, 2020, you've shared wonderful information and history with us.
Thank you.